はい、それではですね、本日、皆様お忙しいところ、在 UK のウェビナーにご参加いただきまして、誠にありがとうございます。本日のウェビナーですね、UCL、ユニバーシティカレッジロンドンから、キャサリン先生ですね、お越しいただきまして、AI は、翻訳業界をどう変えるのかというテーマで、プレゼンテーションを、していただく予定です。でまた、プレゼンテーションの終わりにですね、お時間ありましたら、ご質問のコーナーも設けておりますので、もしプレゼンテーション、聞いている最中で何かご質問とかありましたら、チャットボックスの方にご投稿いただけましたら、後ほど、ご質問させていただきます。質問コーナーの間はですね、マイクなどオンにしてお話をしていただいても、大丈夫ですので、よろしくお願いいたします。はい、そうですね。それでは、早速ではありますけれども、本日のウェビナー開始していきたいと思いますので、皆様どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。Kathryn, could you start your presentation? Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Hiroshi, for inviting us to give this presentation today. So as Mr. Hiroshi said, we're going to be talking about AI and the translation industry or the language services industry. I've invited two colleagues from UCL to join me. I have Aoi Matsushima, who I will introduce properly in a moment, teaches Japanese translation for us, and David Stockings, who again I will introduce properly in a moment, but he also is at UCL teaching French and German, and I'll come on to a bit more detail of what they do shortly. But the way that we wanted to structure this today is actually as a conversation. So I'm going to give a very short presentation with some background on AI, and then I'm going to ask Aoi and David some questions about how AI is in their everyday lives as translators, interpreters, and sort of their reflections on that, and their reflections on training programs in this current climate. So let me first start by giving a short presentation. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, so hopefully you can see that all right. So this is our question for today that Mike asked me to speak on. How is AI changing the translation industry? And we're all coming to this talk with our own views on that, our own experiences on that. So these are just some thoughts from us as professionals in the world of translation and interpreting and in training future translators and interpreters. First of all, I just wanted to give some background about who we are. So we are all from the Centre for Translation Studies at UCL, which is a top 10 university worldwide. We have an MA, an MSc and PhD program in translation studies. And you can see from the screen that students with us study translation and technology for the MSc. And this question of technology has been at the heart of what we do for decades now. So every year, what we do is changed in light of these changes to technology. All of our staff are active researchers or professional translators, which means we're able to move with the times as the translation industry shifts. We have the greatest variety of specialist translation modules in the UK with a very strong emphasis on technology, as I've already said. So that is our context and the context from which we're speaking to you this morning. And should you be interested in studying at UCL, we'll be happy to talk about that in separate meetings, which can easily be set up. So on to the topic, how is AI changing the translation industry? Well, before I try and answer that question, I want to sort of go back in time a little bit. And I want to look at what's been happening really in the last 20 or so years. We've seen this enormous boom in the need for language services, the need for translation and interpreting. And I found these statistics on the internet, which try and put a number, put a figure, put a money figure on the global language services market. And that term, global language services, is very broad. It encompasses all of the work that is done by language professionals, with or without machines, to make material, ideas, products, websites, companies present around the world in various languages. So the market for the global language services was valued at $60.68 billion in 2022. And that figure on its own probably doesn't mean much. But look at it next to the figure from 2009, 23.5 billion. So this language services market and the need for language services is going up at a really striking rate. Now, because we are based in the UK and you are potentially interested in studying in the UK, and because you are in Japan right now, my next two statistics relate to the UK and Japan. So in the UK, there are a huge number of language services companies, and there is growth in that sector. So the growth of UK language services companies is outpacing the growth around the world. So in other words, the UK is a very vibrant place for translators and interpreters to work. And then this one interested me. After the US and China, Japan is the biggest market for online. So in other words, people who can work between Japanese and English are very much in demand. Companies reach out to those really enormous markets in those places in the US and in Japan. So that's the background. When we think about AI and translation, sometimes we think, oh, they're taking all the work away from us. But there is so much more work being done now than there was, less than 20 years ago. So that's a really important background bit of information. What about AI? I had a little look at what the professional organizations in the UK say about how AI is impacting the translation industry. The first slide here is from the Chartered Institute of Linguists in the UK. So this is not just an institute for translators and interpreters, but anyone who is making languages their career in any way. And they talk about machine translation, which for today we can assume that is the same as AI translation. So any translation done by a machine on its own, as it were. We call that machine translation or AI translation. And the Chartered Institute of Linguists distinguishes between three broad categories of machine translation use. So the first one is what they call machine translation raw. In other words, AI or the machine does the translation, and that's the end of the story. The humans are not there. Now that is only suitable for getting an idea of what a text is about. It's only suitable when it's what's called a low stakes translation. In other words, if there are mistakes in it, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. It's not going to have a drastic consequence. And it's only really suitable for situations where accuracy is not crucial. So in those situations, and you can imagine quite a bit of the work in the language services industry can fit into that category. That's where machine translation and AI is really coming into its own and making it possible for people to access material in other languages for free. So in that way, it is a marvelous, marvelous thing. But as I think Aoi and David will be speaking to us in just a moment, a lot of the work that is done by human translators is in this second category, with machines. So the machine translation does the translation to start, and then the professional translators correct. In some languages, though, and we'll hear from Aoi particularly on this and how Japanese comes into play, machine translation is not used very much. And even in languages where machine translation is used quite a lot, it is not used for certain kinds of translation. And these are in the third category. So particularly where creative content is concerned, or where the translation is very high stakes, it really matters that it's completely accurate. Before I hand over to Aoi and David to ask them some questions about all of this, I just want to present the views of one other professional organisation in the UK. And this is the Institute of Translation and Interpreting. And this information you can find on their website. The reason they've put this there is because researchers have discovered that very few companies or government organisations currently have a policy on how to use AI or machine translation in their everyday work. So there's a huge amount of work to be done in advising companies and government departments on how to respond to the ongoing and latest developments. And this is what the Institute of Translation and Interpreting say, which is very similar to the other organization that I just mentioned. The human is and will continue to be essential to ensuring high quality, accurate, and ethical translation and interpreting. And we might come back to that question of ethical in the discussion. The most skilled linguists will be in greatest demands. And this is very interesting for any of you who are thinking to what kind of career you might develop. Commercial success will lie in specialization rather than generalization, becoming very, very good at a certain number of things, becoming a true expert, extremely skilled, will put you in greatest demand. And then some further points which are related to what I was saying at the beginning, that this is a moment of intensification of the language services industry, of globalization. There is a huge amount being translated now that wasn't being translated even 5 years ago. So this is a massive time of opportunity for language professionals. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my slides now. It's David and Aoi, and then I'm going to ask them some questions to help us understand how this is all playing out in their everyday lives. So let me introduce Aoi first. So Aoi Matsushima was born, educated, and worked in Japan before moving to the UK. She has an MA in creative writing and has won awards for translation and for short stories in English. She is based in London. And she works as a translator, specializing in audiovisual translation and creative translation. She was the head of the Japanese department at VSI Limited, which she will explain what that is to you, for 14 years, but now works as a freelancer. Her current clients include the Royal Opera House and various museums. And she works at UCL as well as at the University of Leeds as a lecturer in audiovisual translation and in other Japanese English specialist translation areas. As for David, David has been a freelance translator for just under 6 years. As I mentioned, he works from French and German into English. Like Aoi, he teaches at UCL in specialist areas, including scientific, technical, and medical translation, and also professional translator training. As a translator, he's particularly interested in the fields of sustainability, corporate reporting, and he will say more about that in a moment. You may have just seen on the slide that just disappeared a little emblem called Source2Target, and this is a podcast that David has set up and runs, and it is targeting new and prospective translators and helps them get to grips with the industry, what it's moving, what their opportunities are, have the opportunity to hear from experienced translators. And that is obviously free to access, so you're welcome to have a look. It's called Source2Target. Okay, so I've outlined your careers, Aoi and David, but let's just hear from you a bit more about, let's say, your average working week now, what it is that you do from day to day. So a little bit more about your work in the translation and interpreting industries. We'll start with Aoi, if you'd like to say something about that.
Okay, so I think I will explain what audio-visual translation is. And I will just do that a little bit in Japanese. 松島です。私は、オーディオビジュアルトランスレーションというのは日本語では映像翻訳になります。映像翻訳というのは、映画、ビデオなどのことを覚えていただくと、テキストをテキストにするのではなく、声をテキストにしてサブタイトル、字幕にする。または声を声にしてダビングにする。そういう時の原稿を作ることがオーディオビジュアルトランスレーションと言われています。映像翻訳ですね。で、私はその世界に入ったのは BSI という会社に勤めた時なんですが、So the BSI is specialized in that audio visual translation. That's what I'm explaining. こちらは、その他にもいろいろ映画とかだけではなくてコーポレートビデオなどの翻訳もしていました。で、それは会社の企業が例えば教育のため、社員の教育のため、多国籍企業がいろいろな国にマーケティングする場合、そういった時にビデオを作る。それを日本語の字幕にして日本人の方に伝えるという仕事をしています。So I kind of so I move on to what I'm doing now. Do you want me to tell the average day?
Yeah, average day or average week, yeah.
So this is a tricky question because there's no such average day for freelancers because every week is different, every day is different. So shall I give the example of this week? And but this week has been quite an exciting week for me because I do live viewings. And yesterday, there was a Royal Opera House showed ballet, and that was broadcasted to many other countries, and that will include Japan. So when you do the ballet performance, they do interval. So if you are in the theater, you will have the interval, and the audience will go out to have ice cream. And if you're watching it in the cinema in Japan, you can't do that. So we will show you the video of interviewing the ballet dancers or the creative people, and I do the subtitle for those.
So, and there's a live subtitles, are they, Aoi?
Yeah, but we of course prepare it, and actually it's not actually live in Japan. 日本ではbecause it's a time difference, so it will be shown in Japan in June. But I will prepare my material for that live. But I also have one tonight at ICA, and they were showing documentary, a very short documentary about. They have this Open University documentary festival, and they are showing short material Japanese film, which is old, and they can't put digital subtitle. So they want me to. We have a English subtitle prepared for it, so I have to do live viewing to that, so that I'll be there to do the live viewing. これは小口歌子さんという方が、作った1990年に作った眠れる花という映画があるんですが、ドキュメンタリー映画なんですけれども、それの英語の字幕を、劇場で公開するその場で私が字幕のタイミングを出すことになります。Yeah, so those are quite exciting works, and I have another live subtitle for Opera Carmen Royal Opera House next week. So it's quite.
Yeah, it's exciting. So very, very creative. So in a moment, I will ask you, what role, if any, AI plays in those tasks. But let's just move to David and hear from David what your days look like, and tell us about your career and your sort of average week.
So, like Aoi, it's quite difficult to say what an average week looks like because it sort of changes from week to week and also throughout the year, because sometimes I'm at UCL teaching. I should say I only work part-time for UCL. I teach a couple of modules. I don't work full-time like Kathryn does. So I'm during UCL term times, I'm there once a week. And then the rest of the time I'm working from home mostly. And I guess, to be honest, part of the reason I love what I do is for the variety and for how things change. So if I think back about this month, the biggest job I did this month was I did some editing work for a German university, who were looking to internationalize some of their course content. So I did a very big editing job on it was an introduction to corporate finance, and my job was read it and check the language, but also look for elements that might be too German for an international audience, if you see what I mean, and suggest some cultural alternatives and that kind of thing. And apart from that, I've also done some other corporate reporting. I did some actual translation at the start of the month. Actual translation. I did a translation of some corporate documents, which is, as Kathryn says, I'm particularly interested in sustainability. So they were looking at that. They were talking about these companies and how they're looking to have less of an impact on the environment. I'm afraid I sign all sorts of non-disclosure agreements with my clients, so I can't talk in too much detail. But yeah, so it's that kind of thing. And I also, what else have I done this month? I had one day I'm part of the East Anglia network. East Anglia is the northeast region of, it's northeast of London. And I help run the East Anglia network of the Institute of Translation and Interpreting, which is a group of other translators and subtitlers and interpreters. And we got together to do a co-working day, which was great fun because we were all work from home quite a lot. So we got together in Colchester so we could sit and just have a slightly more sociable day. That was great fun. Then this afternoon, I'm off to Cardiff for the Unconference, which is run by the Wales Network, which should be great fun. So I'm you never know what's coming from one day to the next, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, great variety.
Yeah, it's part of the fun.
So sticking with you then, David, because you've only been in the in the industry, you're quite young and you've only been working for about 6 years. So I guess you never really knew a time before machines were very much playing a role. I mean, how would you say that machine translation is impacting your working patterns? Have you noticed any shift over the last year or so?
Yeah, so yes, you're quite right. When I started out, machine translation was not exactly the default, but it was very common for work to come from me that had been put through a machine translation engine. I should say that a lot of these are much more sophisticated than something like Google Translate or something. They're very specialized engines. And not to go back too far, but my background is in accounting before I became a translator. So when I was starting out, I particularly did a lot of the kind of financial reporting. And because that work is very it's quite formulaic in a way. It's the work that is very suited to machine translation for at least doing the beginning bit of the process, because it is very repetitive. So yes, machine translation has always been part of what I do. And yeah, when I remember when I was at university, people told me all sorts of horror stories about machine translation, about how terrible it was and how it wasn't worth it. It was slower to do things by machine translation than it was to just do them from scratch. That has not been my experience, possibly because of the work I specialize in. But I found that it can be quite, when it works well, it works really well, and it can massively reduce the amount of time you actually spend translating something. And of course, in what we do, time is money. So it can be very beneficial. But then we got to the AI phase, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Gartner hype cycle. This idea of when a new idea comes in, I can't remember all the different stages, but one of the big stages is the peak of inflated expectations, when suddenly everyone thinks that this new technology is going to absolutely revolutionize everything. And in my experience, I have not found that to be the case. I don't want to dive into the technical aspects because I'm not an expert on that sort of thing. We have colleagues at UCL who can tell you all about the technology and how it works. I am not one of those people. But I mean, in terms of the kind of quality of what AI-based translation, or what we call AI-based translation, so something using ChatGPT or whatever, the quality of what it produces is not significantly better than what we already had. So I think we're in this phase where people think it can do all these marvelous things, and they will discover quite soon that it's not the revolution that they think it is. So yes, basically what I'm saying is a lot of my clients kind of expect there to be a lot more AI in what I do, but I don't particularly see. I don't think it's a negative, but I don't think it's a huge positive in the way that some people think it is.
Yeah. But just following on one quick last question following on for you, David, and then I move to Aoi. Have you had any experience of your own workload diminishing? Have you had the sense that there are clients who just aren't calling you anymore, perhaps because they believe in the hype rather than because it actually is going to meet their needs to put something through AI?
Yes, in short, yes. Particularly when it comes to sort of when I do the kind of reporting that companies have to put out rather than, they do their lovely brochure financial reporting, and it's lovely and it's got to sound great and everything. And then they have sort of legal things that they have to put out through the year, and they don't really care what it sounds like as long as it's basically accurate. That's a bit of an oversimplification, obviously, but I found that, I assume because that kind of more mandatory stuff is not coming my way, that it's probably being put through an AI instead, because it's what you were saying about the risk, the stakes involved for them are different.
So it's not so public facing sort of material in that sense. So.
Yeah, it's not got it doesn't, in some ways it doesn't need all the specialist skill. It doesn't need all the skills of a specialist human translator, because that's not what it's trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So maybe the balance of what you're doing is shifting slightly.
Yeah. And just to answer your question, there was a bit of a drop, but this month has been pretty much back to normal now.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which is good after a slightly few slow months.
Yeah, it feels like things are just having to settle from that moment of hype into sort of a just people getting to grips with what they need. Okay, well, let's move to you, Aoi. Obviously, you work very much in the kind of on the creative side of translation. So how have you, and you've been working for a longer time than David, have you seen machine translation or AI change your own working patterns, your own jobs in terms of what you get asked to do, how you do those things?
So for audio visual translation, as I said, it is not text-to-text translation or word-to-word translation, but it is about voice into text or voice into the voice. And voice means human. So what you are talking is not always making logical senses. Particularly documentary, people start talking, but not finishing sentences. And people talk about jokes, very, very culturally, based jokes. And what you need to do is to kind of understand what they actually want to say and summarize into the very short period of time, the duration of the speech. So, 声で話している時の時間の中に字幕で読める文を 収めなくちゃいけない。So the duration and the character limit, what you can read in 1 second, 2 seconds, what you can say in 1 second, 2 seconds is very different. So that means it is quite tricky for machine translation to get into because you need to think, or you need to omit, you need to edit down, and or you need to even recreate different joke to make people laugh. So it is essentially it's still not much affected area. Although people do try to do it, and I quite often get the material that it didn't work, and they want me to amend it. And that's how I kind of got into, particularly when I was in the agency, it was a little bit early time of machine translation. And quite often it just didn't work and come to us. So I would say that, I do ask more sort of machine translation edit than before, which it depends what sort of material it is. And sometimes it's much better to do from scratch to be creative.
Yeah. And so do you, we can't really tell the future, but knowing what we do, Aoi, about AI and how it operates, I mean, do you see your job, your day-to-day, your sort of average week that you don't have, do you see that changing in the future at all? Or do you feel like we kind of are where we are? Maybe you could say something specifically about Japanese English machine translation and AI performance.
Yeah, Japanese English probably machine translation is a little bit level lower than between European languages, which is kind of structurally related languages. It is very, very different. So probably it is not at the same level as, say, English German or English French, possibly. And it was really interesting. David said that it's not going to kind of go as high as people thought it would be. That's what I read from this is the education AI に負けない子供を育てる. This is a Japanese professor who tried to teach robot to go beyond kids to do AI if AI can pass the entrance exam to the universities. And what she discovered is it is the reading skill, basic reading skill, and understanding the meaning is something AI lacking. AI can find the words, but they can't think. They don't understand the meaning of it. And that's a kind of essentially big calculator in a way.
Yeah.
So in some way for the creative industry, you need to be able to think, but you have to be better than AI to be able to get the job. And what you need is the reading skill for your mother tongue. You have to be kind of go beyond AI, and that's what it means is that you need to be able to think.
Absolutely. So let's just put that thought on hold, Aoi, because I want to come in a moment to sort of, what are the benefits of studying, for example, in the UK, somewhere like UCL for Japanese students today. But before I do that, let me just ask David that same question, as sort of with your future hat on, and obviously you're working in French and German, which are languages that have a lot of data on the internet. The AI has a lot of material to use. How do you see things changing in the next 5-10 years? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's so difficult, isn't it? Interestingly, I was watching a talk that Anthony Pym gave, which is on YouTube. It's called something like In Search of Evidence. And he was looking at all these different claims about what AI will do and then asking, is there any evidence for these claims? And basically, the conclusion he came to is there isn't really an awful lot of evidence for all these things about what AI will be able to do, specifically in language and translation. But I think, interestingly, the title of this talk is it mentions the translation industry, and when you were talking, I was thinking, actually, I remember someone pulling me up and saying, no, it's not a translation industry, it's a translation profession. And the distinction between what an industry is that turns out products and a profession that provides services. And actually I think what was going to happen is that the kind of industry part of it will go more and more towards the AI, and the service part of it will come more and more towards the humans. So it will be a question of the humans that are in the market will be there to either help their clients use these AI or whatever systems they are. And I think it was BureauWorks proposed this idea of a language flow architect that would be in charge of this process of helping people talk to the machines. So you will have that section of the market, and then you will have the section that's more sort of consulting and providing that kind of expert advice that you can't, because of course you can't get machines to explain what they've done to you. Like they when they make a decision, you can't really get a neural network to explain why have you picked this term over this term. You can tell it don't do that again, but whereas when you talk to a human, when clients come to a human, they get that sense of someone is actually thinking about this and is acting in the client's best interests. And I think that is where the human part of the market will always be, because I don't think machines can do that. So that's a very broad picture way of thinking about it. But
I think that's a really helpful way of thinking about it, David, because it helps to really pinpoint what the human experts bring to all of this. So I find that very helpful, and I think we probably should have changed the title of the talk. But anyway, we're covering both aspects, industry and profession. So David, just maybe one last question for you before I go back to Aoi. Has AI come up very much on your podcast? Could you maybe just say something about your podcast and what it's trying to do?
Yeah, sure. So yes, thank you for mentioning the podcast. I make it with two colleagues of mine, one of whom is teachers at the University of Westminster and one who's based in New Zealand. And we sort of created it to complement what you learn about the professional skills, about the professional skills you need to make it as a translator. We do talk, because we are all translators, we only talk about translation, not interpreting. But we do talk about subtitling as well. And it's meant to complement, because even, UCL has a professional skills course, professional skills module that you can take specifically for translation. But there is only so much you can fit into the course. So we created it to be a sort of a resource that you could study at your own pace, alongside or after you've just graduated. And so yeah, we do various things. We talk about specific topics that might not come up at university. We also do interviews with practicing professionals, to kind of doing that question of what does your average day look like? How do you actually work? How do you find work? All that kind of thing. And the most recent series came out last summer. So that was before all the AI hype kind of started. So we haven't actually put anything out specifically about AI yet. But we have just recorded one with Joachim Lépine, who's a Canadian translator and sort of expert in business and AI and how you can make use of AI as a professional translator. And that will hopefully be coming out this summer. Brilliant. And he kind of said similar things about emphasizing the human side of things, and about emphasizing that what humans do is not just like a one-step process. It's about emphasizing that you do your research, you think about it, you draft it, you check it, you go through all these different processes that machines don't. And that's how you add value as a human translator. So it was a really interesting conversation, and I think it will be very popular when that one comes out.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing that one. Thank you. So Aoi, final question for you then. Just thinking in more general terms, what do you, against the sort of backdrop of how things currently are in the language industry or language profession, what do you see as the benefits for, specifically Japanese students studying translation and interpreting in the UK? What would be what would you say maybe are some of the less obvious benefits that might bring to people?
Yeah, so I think I will explain the way that your learning translation is very different in Japan and in UK. And what it is Japan, it is more like a learning craftsmanship. So it is not university subject, but it's more like agency running translation schools to train the translator you want to use, or you work with for literature translation. There's a master translator, and you learn from him, and that's the kind of a traditional way of learning translation in Japan. And I think that still is in Japan. You don't have the MA translation kind of courses or logical academic, essays. 日本では、大学院で勉強するというよりも、エージェンシーなどが経営している翻訳学校で翻訳を学ぶことが多いんですね。And particularly, that is the case for audiovisual translation. I never really heard of a university doing. And what's the UK UCL audiovisual translation or translation is that academic approach to what you learn to the translation. It is not about kind of crafting the skill, that side of it, but you also have academic approach. You learn how to logically explain why you do this translation. What is difficult to translate this language to the other language? Or you have a little bit broader view and know the strategy, how to tackle it. You analyze your translation, not just kind of doing the skills. And that's and also need to be kind of proactive about how you want to do it. You need to have the opinion, what is better than this one. How you can kind of, learn to be able to explain it. And that is probably different approach to the translation. 大学の学科でやるということは、論文として翻訳について分析したり、説明したり、そして自分がどういうふうにしたいのかというのを意見を持たなくちゃいけない。そのあたりが、ちょっと日本で翻訳の技を学ぶというのとは少し違う部分だと思います。And I think, it is just, like Japan is becoming diverse. Diversity is becoming a big issue in Japan too, but London has been really diverse society. And UCL, you will meet loads of people from various different languages. So you not just learning about English to Japanese, but you will see lots of people English into different languages. Or you can see that what's the difference of being translating from into Japanese to other languages. And so that's the kind of adding value. So you have the global view of your translation. And I think, you're not working for a Japanese company for the Japanese audience. You are dealing with lots of different globalization, means that your target audience can live in everywhere in the world. And Japanese context will be, into English and other languages. So it is nice to have probably have a little bit outside view from Japan and to have the global view to it. Would be a benefit, add value to you being a translator too.
Yeah, thank you. And I do think that resonates with our Japanese students that we have, that they thoroughly enjoy that experience of being in London and just having so many other experiences as an international student. It's a very energizing time, I think. So thank you. I think that concludes our conversation. So thank you very much to both Aoi and David for giving us your insights. It's really, really wonderful to hear from you. And if there are any questions that people would like to ask, we can try our best to answer them. I think you're welcome to put them in the chat, I think, or just turn your microphones on if you want to.
日本語でも大丈夫です。It can be Japanese.
Yeah, sure.
何かご質問ありましたら、チャットボックスか、ご投稿いただくか、マイクをオンにしてお話しいただいても大丈夫です。いかがでしょうか。
イギリスだといっぱい質問するのにみんな慣れてるので、どうぞ気軽に質問してください。何でも大丈夫です。
I will also just put my contact details up on the screen. So if you are interested in talking about studying at UCL, you can just get in touch with me directly, or indeed if you have questions or you want further discussion about today's topic, you're welcome to drop us a line as well.
Kathryn, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Throwing out at you. I was just wondering what you think about what the place of something like AI and technology is in any university setting. Oh, I mean, for a course like CenTraS, how important do you think it is that they play a sort of key role in the programs?
Do you mean in terms of thinking through how students use AI
Yes.
to complete the program?
No, sorry, I meant more in terms of what we teach.
What we teach. Well, I think the key thing, the absolute key thing, is for us as teachers to know that world that our students are entering, because you know, the reality of workplaces is that, you know, people will always reach for whichever technology is going to be useful, is going to speed things up, it's going to, you know, make things in some way more efficient. But obviously, as university graduates, our students need to bring to that the ability to evaluate the quality of what they're getting, to understand, to research, be able to research these new developments, because, you know, there's no use us teaching them what AI can do in 2024, because in 2030 it might be doing different things. So the skills that we need to teach our students are those skills of critical evaluation, being able to debate things, present things, reason logically, evaluate, think about things like how do we measure translation quality, what kind of parameters are we using, how are we making those judgments. It's all about reflecting critically on what we're doing and thinking through as well the skills that humans bring into the equations, really, you know, starting to kind of think it all through and reason with it. So yeah, that's the challenge for me, is to help students enter the workplace with that confidence to, as it were, kind of move with and in the direction that things are going, and also to know when to challenge things, you know, because we haven't talked about ethics here today, but there are big ethical issues with particularly the AI translation that some people are not aware of. You know, you talked, David, about confidentiality to your clients. Well, it's no use putting their material into AI and giving their confidential material to the AI company, you know. So there are all these things that people maybe aren't aware of if they haven't thought it through. And that's, I think, what universities are there for. It's for the thinking, it's the reflection, and for the debate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm sorry to take control of the conversation, but one episode we did do on the podcast was with Professor Lynn Bowker, who runs something called the Machine Translation Literacy Project. And I think that sounds like what you're talking about, that idea of literacy, about understanding, getting everyone, especially people who use it, who aren't specialists like us, to be literate in the technology, in the terms of in the sense of understanding what it can do and how to critique it and everything. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great project.
I kind of wanted to say that, what's the wonderful thing about translation as a job is all the experience you have in life can be useful. Because I have lots of students already working in Japan and had lots of different backgrounds and want to come here as a career change. And whatever you've done, like working for medicine or working for police or working for, any other, I worked in a department store as a PR officer. And, some of the job, there are some time in the life that you hated those jobs, or, you found that something is very boring and things, but that's become very useful, and handy when you're working for corporate materials and you know what you're talking about, and you have to be very polite in Japanese in certain customs. And all the experience of your life or whatever you do reflects into the translation, but also learning translation can be useful for whatever the job you go into, not necessarily be professional translator, but understanding the language difference and to be able to communicate with others in this two difference is a very valuable skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, and one of the things I love about where we work at UCL and our department, because we have, so many colleagues who are professional translators and interpreters, and each one of them has a different specialization. So you have these extremely interesting conversations with people. I mean, there's one who works with air traffic control and sort of communication in air traffic control, which just always strikes me as something I don't want to think about, that it might not be happening perfectly all the time. And there's someone else who works on shipping, and and then there's there's people who do a lot of work on films and subtitling and so on. So it's just fascinating. I really love working with all the different colleagues.
Hello, this is Hiroshi from SIUK, Tokyo office. Thank you very much for your presentation. As a consultant of the agent, I just would like to ask a question about the application. We get a lot of students who don't have the, related experience or background, but as you explained, then I feel like a lot of people who don't have the related backgrounds can start studying, translation and a career change or something. But then they are still worried about, if they don't have any experience, they might worried about if they need to submit portfolio or take interview, or do they need those kind of extra application process or something?
It's really those kind of things are really quite individual. So if people don't have what might be a standard profile, so in other words, they don't have a background, degree in a relevant subject, or they don't actually have a first degree, if they've maybe been working for 20 years to come in that way. If people don't fit the standard profile, then we will liaise individually with those applicants to see they have, to what extent that prepares them adequately for the master's program. So we're very open to non-standard applications, but it really just depends what somebody's profile is. So if someone has a standard profile, they won't need any experience, actually. I mean, it all helps, but it's not a prerequisite. If you've got a BA in, let's say, English language or something like that, and you've got the IELTS scores that are needed for entrance, then you would get an offer based on those things alone. But if you don't, then that's where we start to look at, well, what else can count towards your qualification to UCL. So it's really quite individual. So if people are just even thinking about it or just want to know a bit more, just drop me an email and we can have a quick chat online and just see if there's a possibility for you to apply. All the applications are done online. The deadline is June. I can't remember the exact date, but sort of as soon as possible, really, just to make sure that visa processes can happen.
Yeah, I think for those occasions, Japanese tend to be modest about it. 皆さん、控えめな方が多いんですね、日本人の方って。私が何もできないんじゃないかとか言ってしまうけど、皆さん一人一人に何をやってても面白い経験されてると思います。だから自分の良いところをどんどん。I think what we need is just to think positively about what you are good at and tell us what you are interested. なんか自分が興味があることとか、自分がやりたいこととか、自分がこんなことに興味があるっていうのをどんどん言っていただけるのがいいと思います。そこを控えめに必要は、日本人の場合はどんどん出すつもりで出した方がいいと思います。Yeah, I think the Japanese tend to be too modest and not really good at telling about, kind of selling yourself to others.
And with translation experience, it doesn't have to be paid. It can count as experience even if it's voluntary. So it's something that's quite, in a way, quite easy to acquire if you haven't got it already.
Yeah, so what you are modest is so far more advanced than some people.
Yeah, exactly.
何でもやってみてください。
Thank you very much for your answer. ご回答いただきありがとうございます。はい。そうですね。やはりそうですね。松島様のご説明いただいた通り、経験のない方でもぜひですね、挑戦していただけたらということで、実際出願されると、経験のない方とか、ポートフォリオない方とかでも、個別に審査をしていくということになりますので、もしちょっとご心配な方であればですね、先ほど連絡先の、共有があったと思うんですけれども、ぜひですね、直接ご連絡いただいたりとかして、皆様のバックグラウンドを個別にご説明して、ご相談していただくということも可能ですので、はい、ぜひご相談、していただけたらと思います。はい。皆様、他何かご質問等ございますでしょうか？もし何かありましたら、マイクをオンにしていただいても大丈夫ですが、いかがですか？そうですね、ご質問がないようであれば。
みんなちょっと控えめですね。
日本語でも大丈夫ですけれども、いかがですか？大丈夫ですかね？
何か興味があることあれば聞く機会だと思います。
I have one question. Sorry, at the last minute. I'm actually interested in linguistics now, but at the same time, like translation and interpretation are also interesting to me. So, is it possible to, like go to the path, like career path to the interpreters or translators after I graduate from the linguistics masters or linguistic masters? Is it possible?
So if you did a linguistics master's, is it possible to become a translator and interpreter? Is that your question?
Yeah.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
It would be a little. I think one of the things that might be harder is sort of getting into the industry, because one of the things that if you study translation interpreting, particularly somewhere like UCL, you're already entering the network of translators and interpreters just by virtue of being part of that community and working, with tutors who are working as translators and interpreters. We have careers-focused events and people coming in all the time to talk. So in that sense, it's a kind of easier way into getting into the industry, I would say. But I don't know, Aoi, what's your feeling for, say, somebody with very good English and Japanese coming out of a linguistics degree?
In the end of the day, what you translate is what, professionally, what matters. And I did a creative writing degree, so it's not directly a translation degree.
Yeah.
And I did work for a translation agency, and that translation was very much OJT. But UCL translation master is very high quality, translation for lots of opportunities. But a good thing about translation is you can come in various ways. So the linguistic, I think in the end of the day, that I would encourage you to pursue what you are passionate about. And that might
for sure.
link to the translation later. And although I'm as a translation MA course at UCL, and I'm kind of I wish I knew this at the beginning of my career things too. So it is, that's what order you do.
Yeah. And we do offer some short courses for people who aren't on our masters. So, for example, to introduce you to different technologies that translators use and these kind of things, which are sort of extra paid things that you can do. So there are ways of getting, some translation specific education, even if you're on a different master's program, I would say.
Thank you.
ご質問いただきありがとうございました。はい。それではですね、ちょっとお時間も来てしまいましたので、本日のですね、UCL の、ウェビナー、これで終了とさせていただきたいと思います。本日ですね、ご参加いただきました、キャサリン先生と、松島様、デビッドさんですね、お忙しいところ、ご参加いただきまして、誠にありがとうございます。また、本日のウェビナーですね、ご参加いただいた皆様方もですね、遅い時間だったんですけれども、ご参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。もしですね、何かご質問とかございましたら、弊社 SIUK の方にお問い合わせいただくか、先ほど、キャサリン先生がご用意いただいたメールアドレスの方ですね、直接お問い合わせいただいても、大丈夫ですので、ぜひですね、何か些細なことでも構いませんので、ぜひお問い合わせいただけたらと思います。はい。で、今日のウェビナーですね、後ほど弊社の、YouTube チャンネルの方でも共有される予定ですので、またちょっと見たいなということであれば、ぜひそちらもご確認いただけたらと思います。はい。それではですね、本日、これで終了とさせていただきます。So, we are finishing today's webinar. So, thank you very much for today's presentation. So, so thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much for hosting us. It's been a pleasure.
ありがとうございました。
Yes, thank you.
はい、ありがとうございました。では、失礼いたします。ありがとうございます。